The blood had dried into the carpet by the time they found her. Not pooled, not splattered, absorbed. Like the house itself had swallowed what happened that night. Detective Sarah Mills had seen bodies before, plenty of them. But when she stepped into that bedroom, the one with the pink wallpaper and the stuffed animals still arranged on the shelf, she turned around, walked back down the hallway, and cried in the bathroom for 6 minutes straight. What she saw wasn't just a crime scene, it was the end of innocence itself. September 19, 2000. The Philpott family lived on Victory Road, the kind of street where people still waved to each other, where kids rode bikes until the streetlights came on, where nothing bad ever happened. Mick Philpott was 44, a petty criminal with a string of minor offenses, but to the neighbors, he was just loud. Brash, the kind of guy who threw barbecues and invited everyone. Jayden Philpott was his wife. Quiet. Young. 17 years younger than Mick, to be exact. She had that look in her eyes, the one that comes from watching too much and saying too little. And then there were the children. 6 of them. Duwayne, Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, and Jayden. Ages ranging from 5 to 13, their laughter echoed through the neighborhood every afternoon. But here's what the neighbors didn't know. The Philpott household wasn't a home. It was a pressure cooker. Mick Philpott had a system. He controlled the money. Every penny of benefits that came into that house passed through his hands first. Jade wasn't allowed a bank account, wasn't allowed to work, wasn't allowed to make decisions. But control is a drug. And like any addict, Mick needed more. He had another woman, Lisa Willis. She lived just a few doors down with her 4 children, also fathered by Mick. For years, he bounced between the 2 households. 2 families. 2 sets of children. 1 man pulling all the strings. Then, in February 2012, Lisa did something Mick hadn't anticipated. She left, took her kids, moved out, filed for custody and child support, and suddenly, Mick Philpott's empire started to crumble. Here's the psychology. Men like Mick don't lose. They don't accept that someone else made a choice that affects them. In their minds, people are chess pieces, tools, resources. When Lisa walked away, she didn't just take herself. She took 4 children, 4 benefit checks, 4 sources of income. Mick needed them back, but more than that, he needed to punish her for leaving. So he devised a plan. May 10th, 2012, Mick gathered his inner circle. Not a gang, not hardened criminals, just 2 people desperate enough or stupid enough to go along with whatever he said. Jayden Philpott, his wife, and Paul Mosley, a friend, a neighbor, a man with no criminal record and everything to lose. Mick laid it out like it was simple. They would start a fire. A small fire. Contained. Controlled. Just enough to make it look like Lisa or someone connected to her had tried to burn down the house. Then, Mick would play the hero. Rush in, save the kids, get them out safely. The media would cover it. Mick would be the grieving father who almost lost everything. The courts would see him as the victim, not Lisa. Custody would swing back in his favor. It was perfect. Except for one thing. Fire doesn't follow scripts. Here's what people don't understand about fire. It's not just heat. It's a living thing. It breathes. It feeds. It decides where it wants to go. Mick thought he could control it. He thought he could pour petrol through the letterbox, ignite it, let it burn for a few minutes, then pull everyone out before it got serious. But fire doesn't care what you think. May 11th, 2012. 3:46 a.m. The Philpott children were asleep upstairs. Duwayne, 13. Jade, 10. John, 9. Jack, 8. Jesse, 6. Jayden, 5. Mick and Jade slept downstairs in the living room. They'd been doing that for weeks, ever since Lisa left. Part of the plan, make sure they were on the ground floor when the fire started. Paul Mosley was outside, waiting in a car around the corner. The getaway driver for a crime that wasn't supposed to be a crime. At 3:46 a.m., Mick Philpott stepped outside his own front door. He poured petrol through the letterbox. He lit it. And then, he walked away. The fire spread in seconds. Not minutes, seconds. The petrol had splashed across the hallway floor, up the walls, onto the carpet. The moment it ignited, the entire ground floor became an inferno. Smoke billowed upstairs, thick, black, toxic. The children woke up choking. Duwayne, 13 years old, the oldest, tried to get his siblings out. He smashed a window, tried to lower Jade out, but the smoke was too thick, the heat too intense. They couldn't see, they couldn't breathe, they couldn't scream. Mick Philpott started shouting, "Fire! Fire!" My kid's ARE in there. Neighbors poured into the street. Someone called 999. Mick ran toward the house, then stopped, turned back, ran again, stopped again. Witnesses said he looked frantic, but not the right kind of frantic. Not the frantic of a father trying to save his children, the frantic of a man whose plan had gone horribly, catastrophically wrong. Firefighters arrived within minutes. They stormed the building, pulled out 6 small bodies, all of them upstairs, all of them together, huddled in one room like they'd been trying to protect each other. Paramedics performed CPR on the front lawn. Neighbors watched, prayed, hoped. But hope is a cruel thing when it's already too late. Duwayne, Jade, John, Jack, Jesse, Jayden. All 6 children died. Not in the fire, in the smoke. Detective Sarah Mills had been on the force for 12 years. She'd seen stabbings, shootings, domestic violence turned fatal. But this was different. Because when she sat across from Mick Philpott in the interview room, he wasn't grieving. He was performing. "I tried to save them," Mick said. "I tried. I went in. I couldn't get to them." But the evidence didn't match. No burns on his hands, no smoke in his lungs, no soot on his clothes beyond what would have come from standing outside. Mills leaned forward. "Mick, where were you when the fire started?" "In bed. Downstairs. You smelled smoke and ran outside?" "Yeah, to get help. You didn't try to go upstairs first?" Pause. "It was too hot." "But you just said you went in." Another pause. I don't remember. It all happened so fast." Here's the thing about liars. They over-explain. They add details that weren't asked for. They try to control the narrative because they know, somewhere deep down, that the truth is coming for them. Mick Philpott kept talking. He blamed Lisa, blamed the system, blamed everyone except himself. And with every word, he dug his grave a little deeper. March 2013. The courtroom was packed. Mick Philpott sat in the dock, flanked by Reed and Paul Mosley, all 3 charged with 6 counts of manslaughter. The prosecution laid it out piece by piece. The petrol purchase, the timeline, the plan to frame Lisa, the neighbors who heard Mick rehearsing his hero story the night before, and the forensic evidence, undeniable, unforgiving, that showed the fire had been deliberately set. But the worst moment, the moment that broke the jury, it was the 999 call. The jury deliberated for 4 days. When they returned, the verdict was unanimous. Guilty. All 3. Mick Philpott, life in prison, minimum 15 years. Jayden Philpott, 17 years. Paul Mosley, 17 years. But here's the truth. No sentence could ever be enough. Because 6 children were dead. And the man who was supposed to protect them had killed them for money. Remember the beginning? The blood dried into the carpet. The pink wallpaper. The stuffed animals on the shelf. That was Jade's room. 10 years old. She loved horses. Wanted to be a vet. Detective Mills went back to that house weeks after the fire. After the bodies were removed. After the evidence was cataloged. She stood in Jade's doorway and tried to understand. How does a father do this? How does a man look at his own children and decide they're worth less than his pride? She never found an answer. Because there isn't one. Some fires burn out. Others never stop.